Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Footy with Fletch podcast. I am Fletch Fraser. Thank you for joining me. Today's special guest is former AFL umpire Peter Carey. Peter Carey was an umpire for 307 senior games at VFL and AFL level. He also umpired 4 grand finals at VFL, AFL level and the VFA. He is well known for taking a mark in the middle of his 299th match as an umpire in the middle of the MCG. So that was an iconic moment in his career. He was also known as the Big Cheese. We're going to get into this and much more on the Footy with Fletch podcast. I hope you enjoy. Hello, Peter. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks, Fletch. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So, where did you get your passion to be an AFL umpire?
Look, I always wanted to sort of be an umpire. I did a lot of refereeing for basketball and I just liked officiating. And one day, when playing my last game of senior footy, I got king hit and got my nose smashed and didn't get a free kick. And I thought, you know what, if I can't do better than this guy, there's something wrong. So started to get involved with the footy.
Yeah, that's really good. Do you have any tips for any aspiring AFL umpires out there?
I think you've got to enjoy what you do. It's hard work. There's a lot of discipline involved, and you're going to get a lot of criticism, but you just got to enjoy what you do, pretty much.
So it is a tough job being an umpire, I can imagine. What would have been the toughest part of being an umpire?
Probably the fitness part of it. You obviously had to be really, really fit, and training was always pretty tough. And so there was that. There was also just the discipline of, keeping your weight down, eating all the right sort of stuff and that sort of thing. But that was pretty much it.
Yeah, so it would have been very much focused on your nutrition. Who would have had the biggest influence on your life to the present time?
As in football?
Yeah, football related.
Probably Bill Della. So he was the one that gave me my big break. So Johnny Sutcliffe first up on the reserve grade, and then Bill Della gave me an opportunity to go onto the senior panel, and he was the biggest influence.
Yeah, definitely sounds like a great man. Of course, you went on to umpire 307 AFL games. Were there any life lessons that you learnt from being an umpire?
Yeah, certainly all the trips that we did to the bush to umpire the bush footy, that was probably a big learning curve for us as umpires, because you'd have to go and umpire. As an example, if you went to Benalla, you'd get there at 10 o'clock in the morning. You'd have to wait for your game at 2 o'clock. You'd do the game, and then when the game finished, you would wait for the taxi to come and pick you up, which normally came at about 11 o'clock, 11:30. So it was a long time to spend in Benalla, particularly if the local team lost. So you learned how to get on with people, and that was a really good experience for us, which unfortunately the guys these days don't have, which is a pity.
Yeah, what do you think would have been, if you were an umpire, say, in the present time with the present game, what do you think would have been the differences from when you umpired?
There's certainly a lot more cameras at the games. Like if on a Friday night, there's anything up to 16 cameras, whereas we only had the 2, which was a long distance and a close-up sort of one. So they're pretty much under scrutiny all the time with the cameras, and yeah, a lot of stuff is highlighted and picked up that we didn't get picked up in my day.
So I guess in a way that if you made a sort of a critical decision, that it would have been a bit harder for you to be scrutinised by the fans at home and then the media?
Yeah, probably. Yep. And we only had replays at the start of my career, so we never had the whole game sort of done, whereas every game is videoed. So that's a huge difference as well. So
Okay.
there were plenty of games where I didn't get videoed at all. So a lot of that stuff was sort of missed.
Yeah, so the technology has definitely improved over time. Who would have been the greatest umpire that you got to umpire with in your career?
Look, I was fortunate enough to umpire with, Ian Robinson, Kevin Smith, Peter Cameron, those guys. So that was Glenn James. I didn't umpire with Glenn James, unfortunately. I was on the panel with him, but I never got a senior game with him. So
Yeah.
they were the really good umpires that I was able to umpire with.
Yeah, they were definitely some of the great umpires. Why did you want to become an AFL umpire?
Well, I didn't really have any aspirations of becoming an AFL umpire. I just wanted to umpire. So just to get out there and be part of it, and that's all it was. And as time went on, we started to get, on the VFL reserve grade and the VFL senior panel, and then the rest sort of took care of itself. So I was probably lucky to be in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, you definitely were lucky. Who would have been the chirpiest or the most annoying players on the field that you had to umpire in your time as an umpire?
Look, the chirpiest was no doubt Tony Shaw. He was always one for letting you know how he thought you were going, and generally, if Shawry was about, then Darren Mullane was pretty close by as well. So they were he was the chirpiest. The more difficult were probably Diesel Williams, only for the fact that he was just always getting tagged, and you really had to look out for him and try and look after him and try and let him know that you're trying to look after him. And that was sometimes a bit difficult because he didn't necessarily like umpires all that much. But yeah, other than that, every player had their own little quirks and little things to look out for.
Yeah, they were definitely some of the greats of the AFL. So, you know how probably one of the biggest roles of umpires is, of course, the Brownlow Medal.
Yep.
How did the votes work for that? Did you discuss it with the other umpires, or was it more individual based?
No, there was obviously I was with the 2 umpire and the 3 umpire system, so you'd sort of quarter time, half time, have a bit of a chat with your fellow umpire or umpires, and just get a feel on who was going well. And likewise at the end of the game, we'd just sit down and talk about who we thought was best, and pretty much worked it out from there. We didn't get any stats or anything like that to look at. It was just pretty much based on what we thought and just our feel for the game.
Yeah, that would have been a very interesting part of your career. What was your preparation like as an AFL umpire?
Pretty much week after week after week was the same. So we'd have the carbohydrates, the pasta in the night before a game, get to bed early, and make sure you had a good breakfast. And that was pretty much it. So it was pretty routine all the way through.
Yeah, so that is very important. Of course, current AFL players and umpires are continually having their carbohydrates before a match. So, of course, probably one of the most well-known moments in your career was when you took a mark in the middle of a match in 1999. What was going through your head when you took that mark?
Well, if I knew what was going through my head, I probably wouldn't have marked it. Yeah, look, it was just one of those things where I was in the middle of the ground. I didn't expect the ball to be kicked in my direction, and when it was, I knew there was a player behind me, and I thought, I might get cleaned up here. And then when I looked back, there was the ball pretty much there, and yeah, I don't know what I did. I just put my hands up and grabbed it, and then didn't know what to do, so I bounced it in the end.
Yeah, and of course you were then given you had to provide the AFL with a please explain. What did you think when you had to provide a please explain to the AFL?
I knew that was coming. They'd want to know what was going through and why. So I went into VFL House and explained the situation. AFL House explained the situation. Swabby was pretty good, and he said that, even though it's not something we want umpires to be doing, it's you've got your 300 next week, and we don't see the need to punish you. So yeah,
in a way, you were sort of lucky in a way that you, I guess, escaped punishment.
Yeah, yes, I suppose. And Swabby was really good about it, and he ran it past Ian Collins, who was the footy manager at the time, and he gave it the all clear. So I was fortunate enough to go out the next week and do 300.
Yeah, what was it like when you umpired your 300th AFL game?
Oh, look, it was really just like a normal game. The only difference was I could take the kids out in the ground as I walked out, so they got to be, out in the middle of the MCG. But other than that, once we bounced the footy, it was just a normal game.
Yeah, it would have been a special moment for your kids. So you have the nickname The Cheese. What is this nickname all about?
So when I got appointed by Basketball Australia to the NBL referee manager position back in 2010, my daughter made the comment that now I'm the head cheese of the referees. So from head cheese, it got shortened to cheese, and it's been that way for 10 years.
Yeah, that's a fantastic nickname. So what was it like? So of course after you were an AFL umpire, you had the place on the AFL tribunal panel. What was it like being on the panel, and what did the role entail?
So I was one of the first of the match review panel members. So it was myself, Peter Swab, and Andrew McKay. And we were charged with looking at any incidents that potentially either were reported or should have been reported. So we would watch, between the three of us, we would watch all the games on the weekend and note down any incidents which perhaps needed to be looked at again. Then we'd go in on a Monday morning and look at all the vision available from different angles. And then we obviously had a table of offences and penalties which we could grade any incident to. And that was pretty much what we did every Monday morning.
It definitely sounds like an interesting part of your role. What would have been the toughest part of being an AFL umpire?
Obviously the fitness part, the discipline, keeping your weight down, understanding the game, knowing the rules. So there was a fair bit involved in it.
Yeah, that is really an interesting part of your umpiring career. So, of course, you got to umpire 4 grand finals. What was the atmosphere and the pressure of umpiring those AFL grand finals?
I wouldn't say the pressure, because again, once you got out there and we bounced the ball, it was just a normal game of footy in our minds. the pressure was probably the unknown on if you hadn't done a grand final before, what was it going to be like. Obviously in front of a huge crowd, and it was just that expectation on what it was going to be. And when you go out in the ground, you look around, you soak up the atmosphere, because as soon as the footage starts, you've got to be on the ball and concentrating. So that was probably the main pressure point, is just the unknown of what it was actually going to be like when you got out there.
Would have umpiring grand finals been the greatest part of your career?
No doubt. Yes, you're fortunate enough to get a grand final, and to get 4 was even better. But yeah, that's it. It's like the players; they want to win a premiership, and for us, the pinnacle for us is to be selected to do a grand final at the end of the year.
Yeah, would it? So, what would have been the most memorable game that you umpired, and why?
Well, obviously the '89 grand final, Hawthorn-Geelong, which arguably was the best grand final ever. It was just a brutal game. That was the last of the VFL grand final. That was probably the best game. Then there was other games like that was involved with the game. Hawthorn-Geelong when Lee Matthews and Neville Bruns clashed. When at the State of Origin at the MCG, when Teddy Whitten did his lap of honour. That was pretty special as well. So, I've been involved in a few good games.
Yeah, they definitely sound like some very important and influential moments on your career. And of course, there definitely still is a Hawthorn-Geelong rivalry in the AFL. Talking about Hawthorn, of course, the AFL coach of the Hawthorn Football Club, Alistair Clarkson, said that regarding his comments a few weeks ago and the AFL's reaction to change the holding the ball decision, what do you think about changing a rule interpretation mid-season?
Look, I'm not in favour of it. If you start the season with a rule interpretation or a rule, then you should, for me, it's probably best to wait for the end of the season to make any other changes. Obviously, the players, the clubs, the coaches, they work to understand the rule, and then that's how they coach their players to play to it. And to change it halfway through is probably not the best way to go, but that's the AFL's prerogative to be able to do that.
Yeah, do you think that the stricter incorrect disposal enforcement will do our game any good?
As long as it's consistent, there isn't a problem. But when it becomes inconsistent, that's when we have some issues.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be a problem if it does become inconsistent. So what would have been the greatest ground that you got to umpire on in your umpiring career? Would have there been one ground that stood out from the rest?
Oh, obviously the MCG was always good to go out on. I didn't mind Princes Park. That was pretty good. Junction Oval had a really good surface. Waverley was just a big ground. Probably if any, the MCG would have been the favourite.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most iconic sporting grounds in Australia and in the world, and you were definitely very lucky to be able to umpire on that great ground. So, how has it been the head of the AFL umpires at the EFNL, and what does the role entail?
So this year, not much, given the fact that we haven't been able to get on the footy field because of obviously the COVID situation. But basically, it's all about recruiting and the retention of umpires. It's doing the appointments for the EFNL seniors, reserves, under 19s. It's looking after anything up to 600 umpires. When I've got umpire coaches in the disciplines, the field, boundary, goals, who assist me with that. And that's pretty much it.
Is it a tough role or do you enjoy it?
Oh, look, it can be tough because obviously you're dealing with footy clubs and coaches and players and umpires. So it's people management that you've got to sort of deal with, and then of course after the game, it's fielding queries from coaches on decisions and things like that. So it can be difficult, but it's also rewarding because you're actually influencing umpiring and umpires and seeing them, improve and hopefully go on to maybe the VFL or the AFL.
Yeah, definitely would be a great job to see those up-and-coming AFL umpires. So with your job at the EFNL, are you also involved on the tribunal panel there?
No.
Okay.
No, that's a separate part.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Do you have any tips for current AFL umpires on how they should deal with the intense media scrutiny on some of their decisions?
Look, that's the job that they do. Our job is just to go out each week to umpire to the spirit of the law, and we're never going to be perfect at it. There's going to be some errors, and when there's an error and it gets highlighted, well, it's happened. Don't take it personally, and move on and make sure that we don't make that same error again.
Yeah,
don't stew on it or anything like that, because it's not meant to be personal.
That is a very important message there. Definitely is a lot of media scrutiny that comes with the role of being an AFL umpire. And just finally, what was it like? Did you think that the crowd ever influenced your decisions that you made when they called, say, the crowd roared ball or those sorts of things? Did that influence your decisions?
No, not at all. If you're concentrating and in the moment, then you make a decision based on what you see, not by any crowd reaction or what they want to do. So definitely not, even though it's a perception that's out there.
Thank you very much for joining me on the Footy with Fletch podcast. It's been great to talk to you.
No worries, mate. Thank you for having me on.
All good. Thank you. That is all that we have time for in episode 6 of the Footy with Fletch podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that fantastic episode. And I hope you can tune in. I'll be back with episode 7 very soon. Bye for now.